First and foremost, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight for 1848 Housing's roundtable discussion on who should be running things, the chapter of the House Corporation. I'm going to be playing a more behind the scenes role tonight, so I'll shut off my camera here in a moment. I just want to introduce the 1848 Housing members who will be facilitating tonight's discussion. So to give a quick introduction, first we have Dave Schreck, Kansas State, 1969. We have Mark Krill, Florida, 1986. And lastly, John Ziza, Ohio, 1978. So brothers, I'll turn it over to you. And if there's any questions that come that are staff related, I'll hop back on and I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Dio. Good evening, brothers. Thanks for joining us this evening. Wanted to start off by asking you, because this is really your roundtable discussion, what hot topics do any of you have to bring to the table that you'd like addressed tonight? The mic is open. Okay, if you're talking, you're on mute. Go ahead, Henry.
I'll start. One of the things I think came up the last meeting we had was that the housing corporation should run more things. But, as I talk about things like the responsibility to control your energy costs and others, I feel kind of a responsibility to make sure that the brothers in the house are not wasteful, not using things. Same thing with the food services and the like. I just don't want to so change things that it seems as if we're making it easy for others to be maybe less conservative on how they use things than they should be. So I just bring that up as a point.
So how do you manage it in your house right now?
Well, right now we pay certain bills. We'll pay the citywide water and sewer bills, but they pay the electric bill, and they'll pay the gas bill that is associated with the heating season. And we're from Massachusetts, so we have a pretty good heating season. We have them pay the food bill. We have a chef and we do that. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag, but we've been historically putting more off to them. And, we're questioning now how much we should bring to FA Morse side of things. We're also in the process of maybe doing a demolition to our house and totally rebuilding it. So we're going through a major change. Our house is 120 years old. So we have maybe different issues than other people do.
Gotcha. So have you seen problems with the undergraduates paying some of those bills?
Just sometimes they're not as keen on getting bills paid as quick as they should. Vendors writing us notes as to what's going on. Some things, you cannot wait on. There's no forgiveness in certain things. So my bigger issue is that I want them to be responsible and take leadership positions to handling these things, not too much relying on us, but making sure that they have the money collected to pay the bills, for example. Us getting involved fairly heavily over the last few years, helping with collections is pretty bothersome, especially for graduate brothers to be that involved and making sure undergraduates are paying their bills on time. So, those are the things that stick out to me. So, maybe you didn't realize it, but you opened up a flood box just by asking the first question.
No, that's what this is all about.
Brothers, question for you, and Henry, I think a lot of us can empathize with you on some of those challenges. Anyone else here have a different approach, or how do you work with your undergrads in the house?
This is John O'Neill from Akron. We take a little different approach. We, as a house corps, we collect the cash obviously from undergraduates, but we pay all bills relating to the house, whether it's real estate, utilities, etc. We really want the undergraduate chapter to focus on the operations side. And from our side, it gets bills paid, obviously. Let them focus on collecting receivables. We have a house manager reports actually to me, so stay pretty connected that way. But I'm not saying it's the right approach, but it's different. We set our budget And it's in undergraduates really have gotten to a place where it's a pass-through. So when the guys are making the deposits, a lot of those are going right through to the house core. We have the same bank, but different accounts. So we really just want them to focus on the operational side.
John, do you collect one rent from the group, or do you collect from each brother?
We set our budget and say we need this much money per semester, and we'll break it up, let's say, in 3 payments. And we get 3 individual payments. That piece of the collection side, I think it's important for the treasurer to get that leadership ability collecting from brothers. I know I got it when I was there. So to answer your question, we get 3 payments, single payments. We do not collect from individuals.
When you talk about the grad or the chapter focusing on their operations, can you speak a little bit more about what operations means in your environment for them?
From their side, it's, I talk to the president with our PL once a week, and they're focusing on fundraisers, community service hours. It could be, or not right now with COVID, but it could be socials. It could be, getting Cheney Cup ready, the award packet ready. That they have, or Rush, which was certainly a very interesting thing for us, obviously with everybody else too, virtually. Anything that deals outside, or I should say within the structural piece of the house is them. Structural, what we call our critical systems within the house is us. And it's enough. I mean, the treasurer has a lot to do, let alone trying to, in my opinion, trying to do the structural system type stuff that we take care of.
Do you use a service of any kind, or does anybody use a service for financial management, either collections or bill paying, or even collecting mail?
No, we don't.
Does anybody? I can speak from my, go ahead.
John, this is Dave. We use LegFi. They bill the parents, depending on whether they're paying for a full year, a semester, or by the month. So that is a collection agency. That costs our brothers $3 per month per man.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
David, we use LegFi as well for collections or for billing for the undergraduates. I don't think we billed parents. That's an interesting one. But for house contracts as well, we set up our standard contract, the language we want, and then LegFi sends it through them. They sign it electronically. But like you said, it's a pretty inexpensive fee. We haven't used them for collections. I may look at that. But thanks, Dave.
We make the parents co-sign the contracts. So when it comes time to collect a late bill, we go directly to the parents.
It's a good idea.
I was going to add, at Ohio, we use a local accounting firm, and they actually collect our mail every day, and they pay our bills, and they do our books and our taxes. And so the burden that you talked about, John, of your treasurer and all the work that that person had to do is totally taken away. And in our environment, the treasurer focuses more on finance than accounting, if you will, and budgeting and just tracking how expenses are going against budget and things like that. And what we found is over time, there's more continuity across the executive committee of the House Corporation, because the finances are a non-issue because they're maintained consistently across different cabinets, if you will.
Makes sense.
John, you bring up a good point. How do you all find continuity? We all know that on average, obviously the undergraduate chapters roll their cabinets every year, maybe some a semester, but every year. And then hopefully most house corporations are pretty consistent in continuity, but are you finding challenges there? Or how do you handle that, from one cabinet to the next?
If you were asking John Ziza or John O'Neill, but John O'Neill.
I was making a point about John brought up.
From our standpoint, this may sound kind of selfish, but from the House Corps standpoint, we try to target specifically the new incoming treasurer for the following year, and start to have that person sit down, start going through the budgeting process, maybe some collections, just trying to get that person's feet wet. The systems are so different than they were for me, 35 years ago. It's so electronic. It's so easy for these guys to do the transactions, but we really start to target the treasurer probably 6-8 months before the new year, and quite honestly try to target a little bit of the presidency. The other three offices, selfishly don't impact me as the House Corp president as much, but certainly the treasurer and the president, I think, are absolute keys to transition.
Henry, you kind of started the discussion. How do you manage that process with the undergraduates? Because them paying some of the bills, I could see being a tall task depending on who the treasurer, even the president is in a particular cabinet.
I think, as John said, we do target the treasurer to make sure we have continuity in that position. It's, outside the president's the most important position we have. And just so I don't overstate it, we as the House Corporation pay all the real estate bills and all the larger bills that comes. I don't want to make it sound like we're giving too much to them. But even with LegFi and all the other agencies we have that can help us, one of the bigger problems we've had is that we still had a period of time when we'd have 2 or 3 people a year just not pay their bills. And the undergraduates themselves, the brothers themselves, seemed to have a harder time than we did to put the pressure on those who are not paying to pay up and do their part of the bargain. And so consequently, we're often having to step in and act like Big Brother, no pun intended, to make sure that these things are taken care of. A person who doesn't pay the bill for a semester can leave with an awful lot of money owed to the house. That could be the difference between, eating a lot of spaghetti dinners or having some reasonable end to the last semester of the school year. I don't count this year as normal to anything. I'll put that aside. But in prior years, it's been a bit of an issue. I will also tell you, because I already mentioned to you, we're trying to build a new house, and we have about 150 donors already towards our new project. It's probably a $4 million project, so it's not inexpensive. Because we're at this inflection point, it's going to give us an opportunity to review exactly how we're doing business going forward, because we're going to move everybody out of the house for a year, do demolition, then move people back. That's going to allow us the opportunity for them never to know a previous system, except for those sophomores coming through, and we'll guide them how we need to do that. So we have an advantage right now to do that. Sometimes having a handful of 2, 3, or 4 or 5 seniors graduating who aren't as helpful as they could be is a detriment to the group. I know they want to have fun on the way out, but we're trying to make sure things get done. So, I'm just throwing it all on the table to you guys to let you know what the issues are. No sense holding back from you because you've already experienced it all. By the way, I was F.A. Morse president, which is the housing corporation for us, in the early 90s. And I'm seeing some repeated issues come back. I thought had been behind us. I thought we got more organized, and you disappear for a long period of time, and then this comes back a bit. So, when you ask what are we doing, I think we're gradually changing. I think we're going to take over more responsibility. But like I said in the beginning, I don't want to give up too much. I want to make sure that they have responsibility. They sense that responsibility and grow up.
Henry, you talk about one motivator for you has been the fact that you're going through a renovation capability. I kind of throw it out there on the table for the group on the Zoom call. Have you found this year with COVID, obviously a challenging year, has it forced you all to dig deeper into your operations and who is responsible, who is accountable just by nature of this year? How has that affected you all?
Well,
I'll just say, for speaking from the perspective of a housing corp president for University of Arizona, about 115 members, where our membership's down from about 125 last year, so a slight impact. But because there's been no social budget to speak of, it hasn't been a significant impact financially. The men have navigated through it. Our philosophy is to be completely hands off of chapter operations. We're fortunate that we have a very strong board of chapter advisors that's mentoring the leadership in all the areas of chapter operations. And we're incredibly blessed that the treasurer of our housing corp is also the financial advisor for the board of advisors. So he effectively is the mentor to the chapter treasurer and really staying on top of the financial performance of the treasurer. I'm looking down the road for when we may not have that incredibly dedicated volunteer on our board. And I think I reached out to Dio, and John, you provided some feedback, as I'm looking at a day where we might have to transition to an accounting service down the road. But we try to stay as hands-off as possible and let the men run the chapter finances, recognizing that there needs to be strong mentorship to make sure things don't go sideways on collections. That's our philosophy.
And your rent, do you charge the individuals, or do you charge the chapter for rent?
We charge a master rent to the chapter. They handle everything on the individual billing. We pay the property taxes, insurance, some of the property maintenance. They pay all the utilities. They pay the food bill. They pay for the kitchen operation. So it's kind of a master rent situation.
And any collection problems or any bill paying problems with the undergraduates paying some of those utilities?
I think that there's always a challenge with a handful of brothers on payment of their house bill. Of course, last year we really tried to work with them and work through that unique situation. But again, really just like some of the others have said, really trying to force them to understand is if one or two or three people don't pay their bill, that affects everybody. That affects the experience for everybody, and trying to socialize that responsibility amongst the brothers, recognize they have to meet their financial obligations. But yeah, I mean, you always struggle with collections on a few.
If I could jump in here, Henry brought it up and then Jeff amplified it. Here at Virginia Tech, Row Alpha chapter, they got into a bad habit a couple of years ago where seniors don't pay dues, or very few seniors pay dues, and just a really bad habit that a lot of guys got into and we're still kind of recovering from. One of the things we're trying this year, I don't know how successful it will be. It's still an experiment, but you got to have carrots, you got to have sticks. And if the carrots of prompt payment discounts weren't enough and the sticks of late fees weren't enough, there's actually a current chapter president who came up with this, and I don't know why we didn't think of this 40 some years ago. If you're a graduating senior and your bill is less than, I think you said $100 by the end of March, your face is going to be deleted from your composite. Your senior composite is not going to have your face on it if you think you're going to graduate with any significant AR. So can't answer how it's going to go there, but I'm looking at the LegFi account. It gets shown to me once in a while, and there's still some miscreants out there. So that's just want to put that out there. If you need a few more sticks in your arsenal there, that might be something that would be effective for all you guys.
Has anybody taken the action of taking delinquent brothers to small claims court?
All the small claims courts in Kansas are closed because of COVID. So getting anybody to court is almost impossible. I have dealt directly with some parents, a couple, and made it clear that they co-signed the contract. They're responsible. I did tell one father that we would just turn his bill over to a collection agency if he refused to pay him. So he agreed to get on a payment program.
I have the same kind of an issue. We've never brought anyone to court. We've semi-threatened a bit to do that, but the truth is we don't look forward to anything like that. We try to work it out with a payment plan, and most of them do. It might be a lot longer than we want it to be, but at least we're getting the money back, even if it takes 3-4 years to do it.
I think this is an interesting dynamic because, and I've heard a couple people here, some have a master lease, with the group, and then the undergraduate group goes and collects the rent from the individual brothers. So obviously that a lot of times will defer collection issues to the undergraduates. And I've seen some of these groups like Leg Phi. I know at the University of Florida, we had a group that's local. It's not Leg Phi, but a lady who does this for several fraternities. And she was pretty aggressive at going after brothers, and so aggressive years ago that all the brothers ended up paying. And then we set a culture where we haven't had AR issues for many years now, because they kind of got used to it. And she was very good about, I'll say in this case, she used the stick. But I think it is interesting where that responsibility falls. Again, a master lease versus an individual lease with individual brothers.
Yeah, and another question might be, has anybody ever considered or done not disinviting, uninviting recent graduates from pig dinner because they're not current on their undergraduate debt?
I don't know that at Akron we've done that directly, John, but I know this is probably 20 years ago. We had maybe a 5-year stint where we just had some problems with guys. And I'd gone to every pig dinner, and I remember sitting down with 2 or 3 of them and telling them, I don't care if you ever come to another pig dinner again, unless you pay your bill. And I knew the numbers off the top of my head. It's like, you owe $321 from 1994. You still owe it. And a couple of them never come back. And, it's probably the wrong way to do it. But most of the guys said, can I pay it back? And it took a couple of years. I think, Mark, you were saying that. And it's fine. And my treasurer, Norm Clark's on the line, and he can attest to, we went years, but some of the guys end up paying it and thanking me later, saying, you know what, it was wrong what I did. I'm glad you stayed on me, which is not fun. But when you die down and out and you get no cash, it kind of forced us to go do it. But we haven't disinvited, but I can tell you some don't come back, and I don't miss them.
This is Kim from Oklahoma State. It's interesting that you're talking about the payment problems. Fortunately, we don't have that issue, but our fraternity and sorority affairs came up with a document a few years ago that everyone signs a separate piece of paper with their lease, that if they are in default, fraternity and sorority affairs then takes it to the bursar's office, and they can withhold them from enrolling, from getting their diploma, to sending out their transcripts. I just thought everybody kind of had that in the works. I'll send that piece of paper to Dio, and he can send it out to everybody else. But I don't know when that got started and how, but the bursar seems to have bought into it. And it sure makes it a lot easier when you say you can't enroll next semester or you can't graduate. It gets their attention real quick. And then that eliminates the, taking them to a small claims court. We haven't had to use it because fortunately we have people that pay and haven't needed it, but it's there if we need it. So,
well, Kim, you make a good point too. I know I dealt with Nova Southeastern for a couple of years. That school would allow you to limit their grades if they owed money to you. So that was extremely powerful there. But again, that every university has their own will or policies as to, some won't even let you do anything. Some want nothing to do with it. I was shocked when worked with Nova that they allowed you to go that far. All you had to do was notify the administrator's office that they owed money, and they held their grades.
Wow.
Yeah.
I believe that Ohio State, I'm sorry.
It's the same thing. So yeah, you get held up at the bursar office, and that's where all the money goes through. And so they just ding you right away, and you're done. I mean, you can't enroll, you can't do anything. So
I believe that Ohio State University provides a service to sororities and fraternities where they'll do collections and do the same thing. They'll withhold grades and not allow them to sign up for classes the next semester. And it's a 1 or 2% charge, I think, that the university charges them. And they're the only university I'm aware of that does that, but I'm sure there are others. But if you haven't checked with the university, you might want to check with them and see if they do provide a service such as that, because that's a hell of a lot of help.
Let me say, I agree. That would be a tremendous help. By the way, I'm from WPI, and the school wants nothing to do with getting involved with our finances. And I'm a trustee of the school. So, there are 3 Fijis that are trustees of the school. So 10% of the board of trustees are Fijis, which is a pretty remarkable thing. And our clout can only go so far. But I wanted to have the administration, do the same thing as Kim talked about, because that would end it right there as far as I'm concerned. If you knew you couldn't get enrolled in classes or something else, I think that would change everything the way we're looking at it.
Brothers, I had an experience about a year ago that I couldn't believe. You always hear about this thing of reporting to credit agencies, et cetera. And our person that was doing UF, she actually turned in a couple of our guys who owed money a couple of years ago to the credit agency. And believe it or not, one of the brothers reached out to us by email about 6 months ago and said, I've been dinged on my credit agency. How do I clear this up with you? I had never actually seen it get that far. I didn't think it actually worked, but it did. And in this case, the brother ended up paying us $1,200 that he owed. So again, I think that's a question for individual groups or whatever, how far do they go in collections,
Do you all have mortgages on your house? I mean, our house is so old, we don't have a mortgage. And so our rent, or what we consider rent, is cheap. In fact, we're probably on average $5,000 to $6,000 less than living anywhere on campus, which is a different issue. I think that people have gotten used to low rent payments, and really, if we had been charging more effectively over time, we could have built up a bit more of a chest of funds to allow us to handle the bigger renovations as they came, but we didn't. So kind of was our fault there. We were trying to make it as comfortable as possible for the brothers, but in hindsight, that was not the right thing to do.
Anybody have any input of how that's worked for them, for Henry?
We don't have any mortgage, Henry, but we were certainly cash poor because of it. Our main focus was to get rid of that mortgage, right or wrong. And then we kind of woke up and said, we don't have any money for critical systems, a new roof, a new, pavement, or whatever the case may be, HVAC. And so we ended up doing something different, and we started this thing called a 261 Club. Our address is 261 Spicer Street. And we're asking guys to give $261 a year, $21.75 a month. And, we'll probably have 15 grand. We just started it last month. And we'll probably have 15 grand this year, but we're cash poor, I would say, but we have no debt. So now we're in what you just said, Henry, we don't have a big treasure chest, and we certainly don't want to go back to the banks. Rates are low, but it's kind of forced us to say, well, we need another funding source. And so it's something different. I think it's going to be effective. It may take us a few years to get to cash, but yeah, so we don't have a mortgage, but we're cash poor.
Mark or Don, might be a good time to put a plug in for reserve study that we do through 1848 there. That's a good tee up, whether you knew it or not there. That was a good segue. So just, for those on the call who don't know what a reserve study is, I had to get educated myself, but these guys are the experts. So I'll let them explain what that is and how it helps this problem we're just talking about.
Mark,
I will. Yep.
Go ahead.
Sorry, John, go ahead.
No. So a reserve study is an accounting process, and we actually have it documented on the website. And basically, it accounts for everything that is a maintenance item for your house, whether it's a roof, whether it's flooring, whether it's your appliances, your furniture. And we have a spreadsheet that you can complete, and identifies what all the costs are associated with maintaining the elements associated with your chapter house. And say your roof is a 30-year roof and you're 15 years into it, and you know in 15 years you have to replace it. So you put your number in for that roof, you know, maybe it's $50,000. And you take into account the time value of money, and the spreadsheet will calculate how much money every year you need to put aside so that when that roof needs to be repaired, you have the money ready for it. And you do that with all the elements of the house. And we can help with that if you've not done one before, or if you have one and it's not working quite right for you, we can certainly help with that.
And I would greatly validate that as well. We were fortunate in my house to pay off probably 12 years ago what little debt was left. But one thing we didn't do, and that was a big question at the time, is we did not stop the rent. In fact, we actually increased it over the years to be competitive with campus to build a reserve. And now we're sitting with a nice reserve in the bank as a result of that. So I would encourage anybody to, you know, maybe consider that reserve study and take a look at it. Those are extremely valuable and can really help you see where things are and where they're going to go, you know, 10, 15, 20 years. I'm sure everyone that's on this call has a house has been through the infamous roof issues and plumbing issues, electrical issues, et cetera.
Yeah, Dio was nice enough to put a link in the chat box for access to the reserve study. So if you want to see that on the website, just need to click on that link. Changing subjects, just go ahead. Yes.
Something that came up at our last meeting is our insurance. It went up 15%. Did anybody else's go up that high? The property insurance from Homes, whoever they
Holmes
are.
Murphy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd heard that insurance was going up a lot this year, but I haven't seen any bills, so I don't have any firsthand experience with rate increases.
And I guess we have no other competitive group out there that fraternities and sororities can use for insurance.
Well, it's interesting that you raised that question. I'm actually working with Billy Martin on looking at our insurance program to see what options we may have. Right now, it's Holmes Murphy, and at least for the next year, it's going to be Holmes Murphy. But we're doing a deep dive on what options may be available to Phi Gamma Delta.
Okay.
So more to come on that, but yeah, it's not just us; it's across the board. The numbers went up, and I'm sure COVID was a big culprit.
Well, they sent something out with their statement saying, oh, because of hurricanes and ice and all this other stuff. And I'm like, and they said national or civic unrest. And I'm like, well, but that didn't happen in every city and every campus. And it was kind of a weak statement. You know, most of it had been going 4%, 5% increases, but it took a big jump this year. And that's put a hit in our budget because now we got to go absorb that or raise the chapter rent to offset that. So they didn't help us.
Tim, don't you have a lot of hurricanes in Oklahoma?
No. In fact, we used to have a lot of tornadoes, but they've seemed to move to the east, southeast part.
I live in Miami and we haven't seen a hurricane in years.
So could I move on to cleaning? In your chapter houses, who pays for cleaning and who's responsible for keeping your chapter houses clean? Is it the chapter or is it the house corporation?
It's the chapter. I would consider that a chapter operation. We have a house manager who assigns duties to each floor. He's responsible to make sure they happen. Then they do some stuff externally on the outside, you know, cosmetic type work. But that's in my 35 years, it's never been a house core thing to clean the house. And we've never outsourced it. It's always internal. I guess that was always something that we thought the brothers should do that live there. They should clean, whether it's their own room or their bathrooms or hallways, whatever it is. So we put that on the chapter.
I agree with John. We do identically the same thing, except this past year, we paid for 3 deep cleanings and sanitizations at a fairly, like at 10 grand total to do that because of the COVID situation. And in fairness, if we didn't, I think we would have had a trouble with the university, which is trying to keep everything on a par. So with all the rules that were set in, we agreed that this is what we have to do just to keep it that way. But going forward, I think the point is we're not clear if we shouldn't have an external service come in and occasionally take care of things. Certainly the property, we switched that a few years ago to landscaping and stuff. We have external groups now do that. And I think when it comes to certain kinds of cleaning, we're questioning ourselves whether we can keep a new house up to the standards we think we can with the kind of solutions. You know, sticking a dirty mop across the kitchen floor doesn't do it in a lot of cases. And we have to get this to a higher level of where we want it to be and to teach a higher level. And I know that that's not the biggest thing on people's minds. And so I think we want to balance what's a good responsibility and something that can be done well with occasional exterior support. So we're going to consider what we have to do in that regard. So our case is still open on what we do going forward.
Because of COVID, did any of you guys on the call here, did your universities demand certain minimums and certifications from your houses?
At Case Western Reserve, they closed us down. We've been closed for the last year.
Wow.
No one's in the house.
That was across the board for all fraternities?
Yes.
For those who have the undergraduates cleaning, Henry mentioned a standard. Does somebody check on their cleaning results to make sure that they're meeting some minimum standard? How do you manage through that? And is it like a weekly thing or a monthly thing, or is it just somebody kind of walks through and takes a look? How does that work for you all who have the undergraduates do the cleaning?
As a section chief, I've got 4 chapters, and 2 of them have no oversight, and their facility kind of shows that. And 2 of them have deep clean sessions, one at the beginning of each semester by a professional company. And the rest of the time, both of those chapters have a house director, house mother, and they're the ones that are supposed to be responsible to, if they see something that's not getting done, then to start the process.
And
John,
what is that process?
First, talk to the people that are supposed to do the work, and then if they don't do it, the chapter will find them, and then have it done professionally.
Well, John, at Kansas State, we had some pretty miserable history with house managers and using the nuts and bolts job description. They chose a house manager this year who has the opportunity to earn up to $1,000 bonus per semester, depending on his rating. His rating is provided by the chapter president, by the resident advisor, we don't have a house mother, by the property manager, by our insurance house corporation member, and they rate him on a scale of 1 to 10. So if he earns a 7, he can only earn $700 instead of $1,000. It's actually proved quite good, and I give him 2 times a semester performance reviews.
That's pretty impressive. Does anybody else have a system like that?
No.
I'll take that as a no. How about your food service? For those of you who have the undergraduates fund the food service, what's the oversight like in that type of situation?
It's brutal. I was in the restaurant business for 45 years. We have a contract food company. They report directly to me because no undergraduate understands how to manage a food service, and nobody on the house corporation is in the food service business either. So is it an answer for everybody? No. But contract food companies know how to write great brochures. Like Thomas Edison said, the idea is the easy part, executing is the tough part. And it requires a lot of oversight.
Others who have the undergraduates fund the food service how does the oversight work in those environments?
Vince, why don't you let them know how we do it at Arizona?
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm not on camera, but at Arizona we contract out for cleaning. We have cleaners come in once a week to clean the common areas, and also once a week we have the outside cleaners come in and clean the bathrooms and showers in each individual room. As far as the kitchen is concerned, the food service company that we contract with, they're responsible for the cleanliness of the kitchen. And that seems to have worked pretty well. Certainly in the common areas, it's been a vast improvement to have the outside cleaners come in. So that is funded by the chapter. The men pay for that. That's what we do, and we've been very satisfied with this arrangement.
Okay, thank you. But food service, I know a couple of people talked about the undergraduates paying for the food service themselves, that operation. I was just curious how you manage the food quality and just the whole budgeting process and the whole food management process when the undergraduates are kind of paying that bill.
Well, once again, at Arizona, we contract with kitchen management services out of Los Angeles, and they also provide services to 5 or 6 other Greek organizations on campus. We have the regional manager resident at one of the sorority houses, and she oversees the chef and his assistants. And as far as the quality and as far as the selection and that sort of thing, that's an undergraduate function. The men have been very satisfied. Even through COVID, we're at Arizona, we're back serving sort of a modified buffet style where the cook actually serves the food, but the men go through the buffet line, and the cook puts the food onto the plates, and we're back serving with plates and silverware again. And the men seem to be very satisfied. And once again, the chapter funds that. They pay, the food service company bills the chapter directly, and the treasurer makes payment through Omega Phi.
Gotcha. Thank you.
3 of my chapters use a food service, and those 3, the students bill for it, they pay for it, they give the feedback for it, and they all seem to be pleased with it. The 4th chapter does a more traditional, where the corporation hires the cook and the kitchen staff, and they're responsible for doing the prep and the cleaning.
Do the undergraduates help serve the food, or is it all done by the contracted chef?
The undergraduates help, I think, in all 4 of my chapters.
Oh, really? Okay. So they do serving and cleanup and dishes and all that sort of thing?
It varies a little bit as to how many of those things they do, but all of them participate to some extent.
Gotcha. Is that true for others that either use a service or have their own cook?
We have our own cook, and the students do help with the distribution and cleanup of the food, except during COVID, where the student, everything had to be plated and brought to a certain place. In fact, we weren't even allowed to sit in the dining room and be together. We had such vast space differences that we were allowed to keep that no normal convention would have worked. So a lot of people ate dinners in their rooms. And so it was highly unusual. So it was like getting every meal in a tray to bring to your room and to come back later. That aside, the years prior though, we would serve it. We'd pick up the brothers would serve the food, would collect the dishes, bring it in, wash it and put it away. But I think that this whole problem with COVID has really raised the ante for us and just how we're going to do this going forward. I hear all the positives of going with the services, and I think I'd love to do that. When we did look into it, though, the price differential was so high from where we were, it kind of gave us a bit of a shock treatment. So we either have to get over it and move on or live with what we have, and no decision has been made.
Yeah.
At Arizona, that's why we chose the company that we're with, which was considerably less than the preferred vendor operation that's offered by the international headquarters.
Do you recall what the price delta was or percentage delta was?
No, but it was substantial. Probably $50,000 a year less.
For
How many men?
feeding how many?
Well, our chapter has 132 members, and we charge everybody for meals, whether they live in or out, the same amount, and all members are encouraged to come and eat. We, because of our county health requirements, we still are in phased serving. That is, the guys who live in the house eat at a different time than the guys out of the house, and that's been required. So, but our food service people are the ones who actually wash the dishes and take care of everything. The men are not allowed in the kitchen by our county health department. They're not allowed in the kitchen at all. So it's worked out well. We're very satisfied.
Is that the only charge that brothers living in the house have, or is it part of a larger parlor fee that everybody pays?
Well, we've tried to keep track of out of house guys coming in, and we had rosters, and that was fraught with all kinds of issues, especially if your close friend was taking the role, guys were eating for nothing, coming in, not getting charged, and that sort of business. That's why we went to everybody pays, and whether they take advantage of it or not, it's up to them. But we found that the best, one of the most fraternal actions we can have is for men to be eating together and coming to the house and that sort of thing. And that's been widely accepted. We have not had any issues. We've had a couple of men who have very, very specific eating requirements due to all sorts of issues, and we make exceptions for those men, but there are only a handful of them.
Gotcha. Does anyone else provide food for brothers as a standard living outside the house? That everybody pays for a meal plan regardless? I'll take that as a
Hey,
no.
John,
Yeah.
can I ask a question? Of the people that responded about cleaning and food, would you consider that you have a chapter house that is the cleanest or amongst the top 3 on your campus? And if you have a food service program, is your food amongst the top 3 in your campus for quality of food?
Well, once again, at Arizona, I can't judge others. I think we have a completely different menu than sororities. The men don't eat nearly like the women do. They're more basic and meat and potato kind of things. But once again, based upon feedback, complaints are very minimal.
We have 27 fraternities at Kansas State. Our house is much smaller than some of you guys. We have 46 men in a 52-man house. And out of those 27 fraternities, I'd say we're in the top 20% for cleanliness. And we're probably there for food now as well.
I would say in our case, we're only average. I haven't been to other houses to do an inspection to tell. I did a bit of a walkthrough of some of them prior to COVID, just to get a feel for what they were. I would say compared to the sororities, all the fraternities are worse. The sororities keep their houses much cleaner that I could see. Our food has been considered good. I haven't heard that many complaints. Like I said, unless they run out of money and can't afford it. So I'm not saying that the guys, are doing a terrible job of cleaning. And I think some of this, has to go back to the condition of your house to begin with. When the house was renovated in 1965 and I moved in 71, the house was still pretty pristine. And we kept it that way for a long period of time. As things deteriorated, I think it gave somewhat of an excuse 50 years, 60 years later for letting things get just a little worse each time through. And then it became a little bit easier not to do the little things that would have made a difference. And I'm trying not to make that as an excuse, so please don't take it that way. But clearly, you start with a good base, a good clean surfaces, as abuse resistant as possible, and and we kind of go from there. And that's what we're doing going forward, trying to keep that in mind as we do this, and hopefully that will work for us. Furthermore, we have a very small house. Maximum is about 35 can live in the house. We typically only have 25 to 28 living in the house. So our finances are way off from houses with 150. That's probably why our food service is so askew from the rest of you that can, probably get these better with just the numbers make a big difference in that case where, like during COVID, we had 18 people living in the house. It was very hard to make any deal work with an outside service.
Hey,
How many of you?
I'm sorry, but I just
How
want to
many of you?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, how many of you have professional property managers that maintain and repair your house on a regular basis?
Well, Arizona, we have a property manager, sort of, it's a little bit different. He is a local graduate brother who runs a property management company, and he is our graduate maintenance manager. Between him and our live-in graduate brother, they take care of the maintenance on the house. If something breaks, the graduate advisor determines whether or not the men can fix it, which is usually not the case. They can't. And so he goes to the graduate maintenance manager, who's our property manager, and then he, through his contacts, subcontracts out, has a plumber come in or something like that, and does the work. And then depending on what it is, we determine who pays for it, whether it's the house corporation or the undergraduate chapter. If men break a window, they pay for it. If a pipe bursts or something like that, then that's a house corporation cost.
Hey, brothers, I want to take this moment sorry to jump in. It is 7:58. We have a hard stop at 8. This line has to be freed up by 8. So first and foremost, on behalf of the 1848 group, I want to thank everybody for being involved. I think it's always great to have these roundtable discussions. I would invite you to visit IHQ's website, take a look at some of the different things out there for shared information. And invite more of your friends and brothers to be involved, and feel free to reach out to any of us on the 1848 group anytime. You will see on the website too, we have different focus groups. Dave Schreck, for instance, on this call here, has been doing a great job, at food service, looking at that and seeing how we might be able to give some help and mentoring out there. And John, as he said, is working on the insurance. I myself am working with New House Corporation. So again, please feel free to reach out to us. Sorry to have to cut it off, but we do have a hard stop. And please join us at the next roundtable, and keep thinking of these great ideas. I think this is extremely valuable, and you all have a great evening. And more importantly, thank you all for what you do for each of your chapters and for the fraternity. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Brothers.
Thank you.